Good afternoon, dear students. A warm welcome to a new video on business environment. So let us understand the meaning of the word environment. Dear students, environment refers to the surroundings in which a person or organization operates. The term business environment means aggregate of all conditions, events and influences that are outside the control of a business enterprise but that may affect its performance. Thus, the economic, social, political, technological and other forces which operate outside a business enterprise are part of its environment. The individual consumers or competing enterprises as well as the government, consumer groups, competitors, courts, media and other institutions working outside an enterprise constitute its environment. These individuals, institutions and forces are likely to influence the performance of a business enterprise, although they happen to exist outside its boundaries. Let us talk about some examples. Change in government's economic policies, rapid technological developments, political uncertainty, change in fashion and taste of consumers, increased competition in the market all influence the working of a business enterprise in important ways. Let's move further. Increasing taxes by government can make things expensive to buy. Technological improvements may render existing products obsolete. Political uncertainty may create fear in the minds of investors. Changes in fashion and taste of consumers may shift demand in the market from existing products to new ones. Increased competition in the market may reduce profit margin of firms. Now, let us discuss about the features of business environment. So let's start with the first point, which talks about totality of external forces. Dear students, business environment is the sum total of all things external to business firms and as such is aggregative in nature. In the second point, we will talk about specific and general forces. Now, business environment includes both specific and general forces. Now you would say, what do you mean by specific forces? Now these are investors, customers, competitors and suppliers. They affect individual enterprises directly and immediately in their day-to-day working. However, general forces, for example, social, political, legal and technological conditions have impact on all business enterprises and thus may affect an individual firm only indirectly. Moving on to the third point, which talks about interrelatedness. Now what does that mean? Different elements or parts of a business environment are closely interrelated. Say for example, increased life expectancy of people and increased awareness of healthcare has increased the demand for many healthy products and services like soft drinks, fat-free cooking oil and health resorts. Moving on to the fourth point, which talks about dynamic nature. So here, business environment is dynamic in that it keeps on changing whether in terms of technological improvement, shifts in consumer preferences, or entry of new competition in the market. Moving on to the fifth point, which talks about uncertainty. So, business environment is largely uncertain as it is very difficult to predict future happenings, especially when environment changes are taking place too frequently, as in the case of information technology or fashion industries. Moving on to complexity. Business environment is a complex phenomenon that is relatively easier to understand in parts but difficult to grasp in its totality. Say for example, it may be difficult to know the extent of the relative impact of the social, economic, political, technological or legal factors on change in demand of a production in the market. Moving on to relativity, business environment is a relative concept since it differs from country to country and even region to region. Say for example, demand for saris may be fairly high in India, whereas it may almost be non-existent in a European country like France. Now let's talk about the importance of business environment. Modern business world is a world of competition. Those who are incompetent to face this competition will be out of the field. For this, it is vital to adapt things according to the environment. For adjusting the operations of an organization according to the environment scanning is essential. Environmental scanning means monitoring the environment of each organization and identifying the constraints and opportunities before them. Now let's start with the first point, which talks about enabling the firm to identify opportunity and getting the first mover advantage. This is the first importance. And here, let's talk about the word opportunity. What does that mean? So opportunity refers to the positive external trends or changes that will help a firm to improve its performance. Environment provides numerous opportunities for business success. Early identification of opportunities help in an enterprise to be the first to exploit them instead of losing them to competitors. For example, Maruti Udyog became the leader in the small car segment because it was the first to recognize the need for small cars in an environment of rising petroleum prices and a large middle class population in India. Moving on to the next point, which says that it helps the firm to identify threats and early warning signal. Now what does that mean? Threats refer to the external environment trends and changes that will hinder a firm's performance. Besides opportunities, environment happens to be the source of many threats. Therefore, environmental awareness can help managers to identify various threats on time and serve as an early warning signal. For example, if an Indian firm finds that a foreign multinational is entering the Indian market with new substitutes, it should act as a warning signal. On the basis of this information, the Indian firms can prepare themselves to meet the threat by adopting such measures as improving the quality of the product, reducing the cost of production, engaging in aggressive advertising, and so on. Let's move on to the third point, which says it helps in tapping useful resources. To engage in any type of activity, a business enterprise assembles various resources called inputs like finance, machines, raw material, power and water, labor, etc. from its environment, including financiers, government, and suppliers. They decide to provide these resources with their own expectations to get something in return from the enterprise. The business enterprise supplies the environment with its output such as goods and services for customers, payment of taxes to the government, a return on financial investment to the investors, and so on. Moving on to the next point, which talks about help in coping with rapid changes. So dear students, today's business environment is getting increasingly dynamic, where changes are taking place at a very fast pace. Turbulent market conditions, less brand loyalty, more demanding customers, rapid change in technology, and intense global competition are used to describe today's business environment. In order to effectively cope with these significant changes, managers must understand and examine the environment and develop suitable courses of action. Moving on to the fifth point, which says it helps in assisting in planning and policy formulation. Since environment is a source of both opportunities and threats for a business enterprise, its understanding and analysis can be the basis for deciding the future course of action, which can also be called as planning, or training guidelines for decision making, which is also called as policy. For instance, entry of new players in the market, which means more competition, may make an enterprise think afresh about how to deal with the situation. Moving on to the next point, which says it helps in improving performance. And how does that happen? So, the final reason for understanding business environment relates to whether or not it really makes a difference in the performance of an enterprise. The answer is that it does appear to make a difference. Many studies reveal that the future of an enterprise is closely bound up with what is happening in the environment. And the enterprises that continuously monitor their environment and adopt suitable business practices are the ones which not only improve their present performance but also continue to succeed in the market for a longer period of time. Now, let us talk about the dimensions or components of business environment. So the first dimension talks about economic environment. Now this has immediate and direct economic impact on business, rate of interest, rate of inflation, change in the income of people, monetary policy, price level are some economic factors which could affect business firms. Economic environment may offer opportunities to a firm or it may put constraints. Now, let us list down some of the components of economic environment. Existing structure of the economy in terms of relative role of private and public sector, the rate of growth of GNP and per capita income at current and constant prices, rates of saving and investment, volume of imports and exports of different items, balance of payments and changes in foreign exchange reserves, agriculture and industrial production trends, expansion of transportation and communication facilities, money supply in the economy, public debt, whether it is internal or external, planned outlay in private and public sectors. So dear students, if you happen to see any of these information in your case study, you should understand that the case study is talking about economic environment. Moving on, let us talk about social environment. So the social environment includes various social forces such as customs, beliefs, literacy rate, educational levels, lifestyle, values, etc. Changes in social environment affect an organization in the long run. Moving on, let us look into the major components or elements of social environment. The first one talks about attitude of customers towards product innovation, lifestyles, occupational distribution, and consumer preferences. Second talks about concern with quality of life. Third talks about life expectancy, expectations from the workforce, shift in the presence of women in the workforce, birth and death rates, population shift, educational system and literacy rate, consumption habits, composition of family. So if you find any of these points in your case study, you can straight away say that this is the social environment. Now let us talk about the third dimension, that is technological environment. Now, the technological environment provides new and advanced ways / techniques of improving production. A businessman must closely monitor the technological changes taking place in the industry as it helps in facing competition and improving the quality of the product. Now let's look at the components of technological environment. Dear students, technological environment includes forces relating to scientific improvements and innovations which provide new ways of producing goods and services and new methods and techniques of operating business. For example, it is common now to see computerized information, World Wide Web, multimedia pages highlighting the virtues of products. Similarly, retailers have direct link with suppliers who replenish stocks when needed. Manufacturers are using flexible manufacturing systems. Airline companies have internet and worldwide web pages where customers can look for flight times, destinations and fares and book their tickets online. In addition, continuing innovations in different scientific and engineering fields such as lasers, robotics, biotechnology, food preservatives, medicine, telecommunication, and synthetic fuels have provided numerous opportunities and threats for many different enterprises. Moving on, let's talk about the fourth dimension, which is also called as political environment. So, changes in political situation also affect business organizations. Political stability builds confidence among the business community, while political instability and bad law and order situation may bring uncertainty in business activities. Ideology of the political party, attitude of government towards business, types of government, single party or coalition government also affects the business. Now let us look at the components here. Political environment include political conditions, in the country, such as general stability and peace in the country, and specific attitudes that elected government representatives hold towards business. Political stability thus builds up confidence among business people to invest in the long-term projects for the growth of the economy. Political instability can shake the confidence. Similarly, the attitude of government officials towards business may either have positive or negative impact upon business. For example, even after opening up of our economy in 1991, foreign companies found it extremely difficult to cut through the bureaucratic red tape to get permits for doing business in India. Sometimes it took months to process even their application for the purpose. As a result, these companies were discouraged from investing in our country. Now the situation has improved over time. Moving on to the major elements of political environment. So its prevailing political system, degree of politicization of business and economic issues, dominant ideologies and values of major political parties, the nature and profile of political leadership and thinking of political personalities, the level of political morality, political institutions like the government and allied agencies, political ideology and practices of the ruling party, the extent and nature of government intervention in business, the nature of relationship of our country with foreign countries. Moving on to legal environment. Now this constitutes the law and legislations passed by the government, administrative orders, court judgments, decisions of various commissions and agencies. Businessmen have to act according to various legislations and their knowledge is very necessary. Now, an adequate knowledge of rules and regulations framed by the government is a prerequisite for better business performance. Non-compliance of laws can land the business enterprise into legal problems. So a businessman should have knowledge about the Trademark Act 1969, Essential Commodities Act 1955, Consumer Protection Act 1986, the Contract Act, the Companies Act 1956, the Factories Act, the Industrial Disputes Act, the Workers' Compensation Act, the Minimum Wages Act, the Income Tax Act 1961, and the Sales Tax Act, etc. Now, children, let us move on to another wonderful term. This is called as demonetization. So, let us look into the history of demonetization in India. In 1946, the Reserve Bank of India had demonetized rupees 1000 and rupees 10,000 currency notes which were then under circulation. In 1954, the government introduced new currency notes of 1000 and rupees 5000 and rupees 10,000. In 1978, the Morarji Desai government demonetized 1000, 5000 and rupees 10,000 to curb illegal transactions and antisocial activities. Let us look into the benefits of demonetization. Increased saving. As a result of demonetization, people will tend to deposit their cash in the bank rather than at home. This will help them to save more. Lower lending rates. With currency demonetization, money moves from people to banks and financial institutions. Thus, there is a better circulation of money and this will lead to lower cost of funds which translate into lower lending rates. Better economy. As more cash is with the banks, there is higher circulation of money in the economy. The government receives more taxes and can undertake more development projects. This leads to better performing economy. Curbing antisocial activities. Usually, cash is the mode of transaction for antisocial activities. Thus, demonetization curbs these activities. It also forces antisocial units to find ways to get rid of the old notes. As a result, there is a better control over the unaccounted money in the economy. Moving on, reducing counterfeit currency notes. Banks check if the old notes are genuine or counterfeit before accepting them. Thus, this allows the government to weed out counterfeit notes from the market. Now let us look into the impact of demonetization. Money and interest rates, there is decline in cash transactions. Bank deposits have increased. Increase in financial savings. Moving on to the second point, private wealth. Decline since some high demonetized notes were not returned and real estate prices fell. Public sector wealth was not affected. Digitalization, digital transaction among new users, rupee increased, real estate prices declined. There was rise in income tax collection because of increased disclosure. Now, let us look into the word digitalization. This has broadly impacted three sections of our society. The poor who are largely outside the digital economy, the less affluent who are becoming part of the digital economy, who have been covered under Jan Dhan accounts and rupee cards, the affluent who are fully conversant with digital transactions. Thank you, dear students, for being patient. I hope the information is useful.